I remember the moments when Jessica and I were at the peak of our happiness. The first years together. We laughed until we cried, we hugged under the moonlight, and her hands felt so warm when they touched me. She was my everything at that time. One evening we were just sitting on the couch in our living room, feeling each other. I was running my finger around her neck, and she was looking at me with such eyes that I couldn't look away. This was the Jessica I had fallen in love with. Those moments when her lips gently touched mine, and I felt this burden of passion that we shared. The feeling of closeness that united us was getting stronger and stronger. No matter how hard the days were, I always found support in her smile, in the look she gave me when we were alone. Those intimate moments between us were meant to be ours alone, and I cherished them without thinking about the future. Those nights when we were together, I felt that nothing could separate us. Our bodies, like nothing else, were completely in harmony. She was my passion, my love, and I believed that we would be together forever. But something changed. I couldn't understand when it happened, but over time Jessica started acting strangely. Every time I tried to touch her, her body became distant, as if there was an invisible wall between us. She no longer hugged me the way she used to. I remember one night we were lying in bed and I tried to touch her shoulder, but she just curled up in a ball, turning away from me. This moment remains in my memory. I could feel the cold on her skin as she pulled away. And although I tried to talk to her about it, every conversation ended with a quick evasion or saying that she was just tired. To be honest, I didn't want to believe what seemed obvious. I was too shocked to admit that something was wrong. After all, we had always been closer than just husband and wife. Our bodies were a reflection of our love, and I couldn't even imagine that she could hide anything. One night changed everything. Jessica came home late. Her look was different, slightly confused. I asked her if she was okay, but she just said she was tired. But it was hard for me not to notice that her movements became more nervous. She turned away when I tried to talk about us, that there was a distance between us. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept coming back to how I felt her pulling away from me. And then I realized that we were no longer the same people we used to be. I picked up my phone and sent a message I would never have thought to send. I decided to find out the truth, even if it was painful. The next day, when I checked her phone, I saw a message from Ryan, one of her colleagues who were clearly not just friends. The words they wrote to each other left no room for doubt. I saw their plans to meet that night, and I knew it was more than just work-related matters. My world started to fall apart. I remember standing in front of her door trying to take it in. It felt like my soul stopped for a moment. How could I not see this? How did I not realize that she was no longer the person she was for me? Those moments of passion that once united us had become alien to me. I could not keep silent any longer. All the questions and doubts that had been accumulating for months exploded in one moment. I confronted her with the fact, I know what happened. She tried to deny it, but her words sounded hollow. Every attempt she made to defend herself just made things worse. I felt angry, but at the same time incredibly sad. I could not imagine that she, whom I loved with all my heart, could do this to me. I could no longer maintain control over my emotions, and so I exclaimed, "Jessica, why did you do this to me? Why did you betray me? Why are you destroying everything we have built?" She was silent, and I just looked at her. And I realized that nothing could be changed. My fingers trembled as I dropped the phone on the floor and turned away from her. With every second that passed, I could feel the world growing smaller and darker. She stood there, silently, at a distance, and I could feel her every cell turning away from me. "You can't understand what this means to me, can you?" I said, but it wasn't a question. It was a statement. I said it as if I was trying to understand how we had gotten to this point. All those moments when I held her in my arms, when we shared our secrets and smiles, it all fell apart, and I didn't know how to put it back together. Her eyes began to fill with tears, and although I wanted to feel some kind of relief from her pity, I couldn't. Each tear was like another knife in my back. I couldn't find any compassion in myself. "Do you really think that I don't love you?" Her voice was trembling, but I didn't trust these words. Too many times I had heard similar words before it got worse again. Love. It's more than words. It's not just phrases, Jessica. It's about trust. It's being together, even when things go wrong. And what you did has nothing to do with love. I couldn't stand the distance between us any longer. I took her hand. It was an automatic gesture that I had long been accustomed to, but now I felt only cold. How did we come to this? The breakup was painful. It wasn't just the end of a relationship, it was the destruction of a part of me. I thought about everything we had experienced together, all the moments of intimacy we had shared. And now I was standing in front of her as if she were a stranger. The days dragged on like heavy footsteps in the mud. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. My heart was empty, but my mind was torn apart. How could she have done this? How could I not notice? I began to walk to the places where we used to be happy, our favorite park, where we spent time in each other's arms, looking at the stars, laughing carefree. Now these places seemed empty. They reminded me that I had lost more than just my wife. With each new step I tried to get back to myself. Not long ago, I was a man who was trusted and loved. Now I was the one who had to pull myself out of this abyss, although I didn't know where to start. After a few weeks of solitude, I began to notice changes. Time, although it did not take away all the pain, gave me the opportunity to feel alive again. And then, one late night, I met her, Sarah. She was an acquaintance from work, a woman I had always seen only as a colleague. But now she looked different. She came up to me when we met by chance in a cafe. And suddenly I felt that she had the same look in her eyes that I had once seen in Jessica's eyes, a look that was full of emotion. She said that she saw my problems, and I could feel her words reaching for mine. "You look different," Sarah said as we started talking. I smiled, although it was more of an automatic thing. But I could feel her presence, her warmth, from a distance. With words that sounded gentle, she invited me for coffee, and we started talking about everything. There was an invisible chemistry between us. And I couldn't deny it, I felt like something old and forgotten inside me was waking up again. She looked at me as if she wanted to know every detail of my soul. We sat there for hours, and the more I learned about her, the more I realized that this connection was not just a coincidence. There was the same passion in her eyes that I had been missing. However, when she got up to leave, her hand touched mine, and I felt this impulse that ignited something inside me again. It was a new primal passion, the one I needed to forget about the pain and emptiness. Over the next few weeks, I tried to forget everything that had happened to Jessica. Nothing worked. All these meetings with other people, these attempts to start a new relationship, everything was just an attempt to drown out the pain. I plunged into work, tried to distract myself, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling of emptiness. All my thoughts always returned to what we once had. I spent sleepless nights trying to understand why Jessica did this. What made her abandon me so suddenly? Over and over again, I wanted to call her, to meet her, if only to hear her voice, even if it would lead to nothing. But I always restrained myself. I knew it wouldn't help, that it would just renew the pain. And then there was Sarah. She became my outlet. Her presence was soothing, her words comforting. But the more I talked to her, the more I felt the old emotions start to come back to me. It wasn't hard for Sarah to get into my heart, because she had this incredible kindness that I hadn't felt in so long. She was just natural. And that evening, when we were sitting on the park bench again after our meeting in the cafe, her hands touched mine, and I felt every cell in my body react to this touch. We sat in silence, with only the soft light of street lamps around us. "Can I trust you?" she whispered. And then I felt that same fear again. I couldn't forget Jessica, no matter how hard I tried. How could I tell Sarah that I wasn't ready for a new relationship? How could I give my heart away again? At the same time, I realized that all of this was inevitable. If I wanted to move forward, if I wanted to rebuild myself, I had to allow myself to love again. "You can," I answered. And I was surprised at how easy it was to say. The next day I received an unexpected message. It was Jessica. She wrote simply, "We need to talk." These few words caused a storm inside me. I didn't know what I was feeling: anger, fear, doubt, or even interest. Was this supposed to happen? Could I find the strength to look her in the eye after everything that had happened? I felt like I was returning to the same place where it all began. The same questions, the same emotions. We met in our old cafe where we used to spend time together. Every step to that place seemed harder than ever before. She was sitting at a table, nervously twirling a glass of water. When I sat down across from her, there was a strange silence between us. Jessica was different. Her gaze was not what I remembered. I saw neither pity nor despair in her eyes. It was the look of a person trying to find an answer to a difficult question. "I understand if you hate me now," she said, not looking at me. "Do I hate you? No. I can't feel that. I don't know what to feel," I replied. And it was true. We talked for a long time, although the words were meaningless. She tried to explain her actions, to justify herself, but I couldn't listen to it. All her words felt like empty phrases that could not change what had happened. But over time, the more I listened to her, the more I began to understand. It wasn't about us, it was about her. Jessica couldn't handle the pressure. She was searching for herself, and I was probably just a part of her journey that she had to say goodbye to. Since then, I have realized one thing: I cannot stay in the shadow of the past. I respect our shared memories, but I can no longer let them define my life. I made a decision: I have to move forward. As hard as it was, I realized that my heart no longer belonged to Jessica. It was her story, not mine. And even though she will leave a mark on my life, I know that mark will not be the only one. My journey is just beginning. And although I'm not ready for a new relationship, I know this is not the end of my story. Sarah sat next to me and I felt at peace. I may not be ready to love again, but I was ready for a new beginning. And although her presence brought me comfort, I knew that what was more important now was me and my emotions. Only when I learn to love myself will I be ready to open my heart to another person. As the months passed, I finally began to realize that losing Jessica was not the end. It was just one of the stages of my life. Accepting the pain, but also recovering from it. I worked on myself, started to find joy in simple things again: playing sports, reading, traveling alone. Sarah and I continued to meet. She became my support, although I still couldn't give my heart completely. We spent a lot of time together, but I remained cautious, not wanting to take steps I wasn't ready to take yet. One evening, as we sat on the balcony, I looked at her face. And this time I felt something different. It wasn't just affection, it was real warmth. Sarah was a part of my treatment process, and I began to realize that her presence had become more important to me than I could have ever imagined. But I realized that you can't go all the way with someone if you don't give yourself completely. "I think I'm ready," I said quietly, looking into her eyes. "Ready for what?" she asked with a smile, although she already knew what I meant. "Ready to open my heart again." And we sat together in silence, feeling that same warm and tender connection begin to emerge between us. I didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Finally, after all the trials, after all the painful moments and uncertainties, I found peace. I was not the same man who came to Sarah. I was stronger, more mature, and I had finally learned to love myself. I thought about Jessica, the part of my life that would always be with me. I couldn't forget her, and I didn't want to. But I no longer let her dictate my present. I didn't let the pain guide my actions. She was part of my journey, but not my end. Now I was ready to start a new chapter. Although the future was uncertain, I knew that each new day gave me the opportunity to become a better person. I was ready to open new doors, even if it meant starting from scratch. I looked at Sarah, and in her eyes I saw something I had been missing: understanding. Understanding that we all make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we can't be better tomorrow. This was a chance for both of us. "I'm ready," I repeated, and this time it was not just a statement. It was a promise to myself and to her. In the end, I realized that the best thing I could do was to move forward. And although this path was not what I had imagined, it was mine. I let go of fear, doubt, and pain. I allowed myself to dream again, to live again. Sarah and I started building something new together. It was hard at first, but over time we learned to be together without trying to label or forget the past. We gave ourselves a chance, and it was a real chance. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. But I know one thing: I am free. Free from my fears, from pain, and from the past. I chose to move on, and this path begins here and now. Sometimes time does not heal wounds. It only allows you to understand them, accept them, and move on. My heart remains with Jessica, but my life belongs to me. And in the end, that's all that matters. We are all trying to find our place in this world, and sometimes we make mistakes. But the real power is in realizing that and allowing yourself to start again. Sarah is not the image I was looking for. She is a new opportunity. And I promise myself that I will appreciate it every new day. Life is more than just going through pain. It's a chance to build something better, even if it means starting from scratch. And I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to love again.